had my first ever pregnancy result, and I was through the roof. And I wrote it actually on the day of like the first day that I was miscarriaging. And that day I remember saying like, I'd like to see your face and to look you in the eye. I've written down my questions and I've come to ask you why, but I think it's less about the answers and it's more about my heart. So hold me close, pull me tight, and today we can restart. That day, I think, recognizing that his friendship is the pearl of great price.
Come on.
It is the treasure. It is the thing that we were made for.
Hi friends, I'm Sabrina and this is The Healthy Christian, a podcast about spiritual growth and emotional health because the best you is a whole you. Welcome back to today's episode. With me, I have a very special guest, Jessie Rose. Jessie Rose is a songwriter, she's a worship leader, she's a pastor at Kingdom Culture Church here in Brisbane. Jessie, why don't you say hello to the people?
Hello, two girls from Kingdom City, Kingdom Culture.
Yes.
I love it, all the kingdom.
Exactly. We just love the kingdom.
We do.
I think people actually get the names of our churches confused sometimes.
Yes, Fred's told me stories. That's our pastor, where he's actually gone to speak at other churches and has been introduced as Kingdom City, and he's just made a joke and be like, it's such an honor to work with Pastor Mark Barragees, and he just rolls with it.
He mentioned that the last time, and
so
it's
funny.
like, yeah, you just got to go with it. You know what? We might be part of different churches, but we're all part of the bride of Christ, and we're all pointing people towards Jesus. So,
That's
you
it.
know, we
The
are
family
one.
of God, different rooms, same family, same Father.
Yeah,
So good.
100%. Well, Jessie, today I suppose we're going to talk about maybe quite a difficult topic, and it's something that people have struggled with for different periods of time. But why don't we just jump straight into where it started for you? And we're talking about infertility. We're talking about the desire for children.
Yeah.
And what has that been like in your own life?
Yeah, well, my husband and I, we've been married for 9.5 years. So yeah, my husband Dan, he's awesome. And I think it was probably about 3 years in that when we got married, we're like, oh, we'll wait like 3 to 5 years. I think a pretty typical plan. But yeah, when we started trying, that first year, it was kind of like relaxed. I think I had a lot going on in terms of church and music, and so it was relaxed in my heart. But I think about a year in, I started to wonder and go, this seems to be a little bit tricky. So I went and saw the doctor, and I actually went and saw a gynecologist. And I remember that was probably the first time where I realized something's going on here. I remember him marking as he was running some tests and writing like extreme pain. And I was like, oh, this isn't normal. Like the experience that I've had, and I have a condition called endometriosis that I am believing that the Lord can and will heal me from.
Come on.
But that's my current circumstance. And so that causes a number of issues that I didn't even realize. I think there's not a lot of, it's a growing awareness, I would say. There's a lot more awareness now. It's increasing, but I would say it's been something that it's a bit of a woman's issue that sometimes just gets misdiagnosed or downplayed. But yeah, that was the first moment that I realized, okay, something's going on. And I remember I had to have a surgery to officially have it diagnosed. And, I was fronting up the money because it's not covered. We live here in Australia where some stuff's covered in the public system, but we had to pay. And I was like, wow, I'm really spending a lot of money to find out whether I have this thing. So there was this mixed feeling of like, am I just going to wake up and it's just like, no, this isn't it. And so I remember coming to from the surgery and him saying like, you have stage 3 endo, and having a mixed feeling of like, okay, like on the one hand, I'm glad that I'm getting answers, but on the other hand, it's like, oh, like there's an issue here that no one expects when they get married, that they, like a few years in, you're going to be diagnosed with something. But I think I still had a lot of hope after that first surgery. I was recovering from that surgery, but I was like, oh, now it's going to be good. I listened to a lot of different stories and testimonies of women who fell pregnant quite quickly after that particular procedure. And so my hope was up. But I would say like that period was quite challenging, those few months after that first surgery, where I realized like, oh, that didn't fix it. And so, yeah, I would say it's been an ongoing journey. We are now 6.5 years into trying, and the road has It's been obviously prayerful and I've had hands laid on me many times, so believing for a miracle, and I still am. But also we also don't believe that it's wrong to use doctors and medicine. So we've prayerfully engaged with different professionals along that journey, and I've had 3 surgeries. We've done IVF, and there's been a number of different procedures that we've engaged with. But I think in it all, like I'm just believing that God is able to work through however he wants to do it, whether it's like a complete and utter miracle where, I mean, and how cool will that testimony be? Like 3 surgeries and like none of that. So that's probably what I'm still like here, like for like contending for, while still it's a tension. It's actually, I find that quite a tension as a Christian, like the walk of where do you engage a medical professional? Like, and if that is a lack of faith, that's something that I really had to wrestle actually. But we have wrestled that and found what we've felt in our story. And it's probably not a one size fits all for everybody, but for us, we've really felt like, let's contend and believe for the miraculous. Let's believe that he can do it without anything, but also that there's nothing wrong with seeking help as well. I don't know if that's.
Wow. That amount of time, I can, only imagine how difficult the highs and the lows of really clinging to the promise in that. You said 6.5 years now. And I know that you would have so many people praying for you and believing for you, and we would join in that, faith element as well. And sometimes that is the tension of faith, is we are still in the wait, like we're stuck in the middle. And so often when we haven't received the breakthrough or we haven't experienced the blessing yet that we're believing for, I honestly look up to you so much in terms of your persevering faith. It is so inspiring and encouraging. And this is only one aspect of your life. I know there's other parts of your life where the grace of God is so evident. But I think the grace of God is evident on you because of the way that you have pushed through and persevered. You're amazing, Jessie. You're amazing. So the story so far is, started trying for a baby, believing for a baby, early years of marriage, 6.5 years later, kind of find yourself here. What are some of the things that you've learnt along the way that have really kept you through? Because I believe people may be listening and they're stuck in the middle. They're still in the wait. They haven't seen the breakthrough yet. What helped you walk through the highs and the lows of that journey and still continue to go forward?
I think there's been probably two things that I would boil it down to in my life. One would be like friendship with God. I think in my early years of walking with the Lord, when I really experienced him for myself, I grew up in a Christian home, but I think it was really when I was 15, 16 years old that I really began to follow him, give him my life and know him and spend time. I was actually homeschooling at the time, and I remember I had a keyboard and I would sit down, to start my day, and I was meant to do my math, my math work. But I was
not doing your schoolwork, playing the keys.
Well, I was like, I'll just do a little bit of piano beforehand. And I remember looking up at the clock one day and seeing that 4 hours had gone by as a 15-year-old that I'd just been worshiping when I was, meant to be doing maths. But I think like in those early years of my faith, like the friendship of the Lord, the closeness of Jesus in a personal way. He's not just an impersonal force or God or concept. He's a person and he wants to know me. And so I think that friendship has carried me through this season and other hard seasons of that I've walked through, even before. Our church went through a really hard season where and it was the Jesus closeness, the closeness of his friendship that held me through that as well. And so I think one, his friendship and protecting that and not allowing anything that happens to cause like an offense that would cause me to not want to engage with him. I think like the danger in a marriage, right? Like if I'm married, and the danger isn't when you're like, talking things through and sometimes even having conflict and wrestling. It's when you like just stop. It's like when you become completely apathetic.
It's the silence. It's the distance.
You stop looking. You stop caring. It's just nothing. And I think that is the thing that I have wanted to guard against with the Lord in this, because there's a temptation to even be offended with him, and because he's the giver of life, and even, you know, my unsaved doctors, they would say like, we can't make this like all life is a miracle. Like they know their limits. They know like we have science, but at the end of the day, and so ultimately, when I receive my miracle, it's going to be from God, which then means when you're not receiving that miracle, you're like, well, God,
is this you?
Like you're the only one able. So I don't want to be mad at you, but there's been times where I've felt mad. But I think he's invited me to bring that anger to him, bring that pain to him, and not to avoid him. Like one of the songs on my personal album that I wrote is called Hiding, and it's about this concept because I wrote it actually on the day of like the first day that I was miscarrying like an IVF transfer that had happened. And so I'd had my first ever pregnancy result, and I was through the roof. Like it was the first time, sorry if I get emotional talking about this, but it was the first time that like my parents had been able to celebrate, and like some of my best friends, they bought clothes. Like it was just like, it was this triumphant moment of like, it's working. And then it was only like a few days later, I began to bleed, and I actually sat down at the piano and I said to Jesus, I was like, I've been avoiding you because I'm so anxious about the result here and what I want. And at the time I was doing Bible college, so I was even like doing assignments on the Lord. Like I was studying things, but on that personal level, I wasn't looking at his face, and I wasn't. There was an avoidance that was happening even in my like going through the motions. And that day I remember saying like, I'd like to see your face and to look you in the eye. I've written down my questions and I've come to ask you why, but I think it's less about the answers and it's more about my heart. So hold me close, pull me tight, and today we can restart. And I think like that day, I think recognizing that his friendship is the pearl of great price.
Come on.
It is the treasure. It is the thing that we were made for. And, you know, I was having a conversation just 2 days ago with a man on a plane, and he was telling me he was a very spiritual man, but not a Christian. And so we got to have the conversation, and I just got to talk to him about that he's not a force that's just far away, and it's not just positive. This is a person, and it's a dynamic relationship, and Jesus wants that close and personal relationship. So I think that would be like the first biggest takeaway. And then I think the second thing is like his goodness.
Yeah.
That he's personal and that he's good.
Yeah.
And even when my circumstances aren't matching up with that truth, that is the truth.
Yes.
And so my circumstances at some point in some way are going to get in line with that truth, because
it's the greater truth, isn't it?
It kind of reminds me of the line, The Witch in the Wardrobe, where like Aslan says, like, don't cite the deep magic to me, which like I was there, like, but like at the, you know, the deep magic, but it's like the deeper truth, the truth beneath the truest truth is that he's good and that he's faithful.
That's right.
And that supersedes, and that's the trump card. And so that's like what I anchor myself to, even when things don't look that way. That's the truth that I'm like, I see it in scripture, I've seen it in my life, and I sense it in his nearness and his closeness. And so that's what I'm going to like proclaim as the banner over my life, is his goodness.
The vulnerability of you to say like, I avoided God in that moment. And there is a propensity when we are hurting, when we are in pain, to draw away from God, when in reality, the place where we find comfort and peace is when we draw close to him. You know, he is the shepherd that our heart needs. I love the principle that you shared, that yes, we're seeking breakthrough and there are promises that God has made to each and every one of us. But ultimately, what's better than the promise is the promise keeper.
Yep.
Like even in my life, there's beautiful things that he's added to my life. But the best part of my life is that I get to walk with Jesus. It's not that I'm a pastor or a leader or a wife or a mother. It's actually day by day, I get to take the hand of Jesus, and he is my companion. He is my shepherd. You know, he's the one that leads us down paths of righteousness. And that gives us such peace that surpasses our understanding, and it liberates us when we look at circumstances and often we're like, where are you, God?
Yeah.
Like, I can't quite see it.
Yeah.
But we pull ourselves up to the greater truth of, Romans 8:28, that he works all things together for good, those that love him and are called according to his purpose. I actually have my Bible here, and it's open to the book of Job. And we talked about it just before we started. The book of Job is a wild time. I feel for this man. Oh. There's so much going on. But I just want to read something that really, I think it encapsulates the heart of God for us. And it says this: when faced with intense pain, God's people may not learn why as much as they come to know who. Job never received answers to all of his questions. What he really needed to learn was that God is the who he could depend on. In life, there is so much that happens that cannot be explained. In the midst of life's uncertainty. Can I read today? I'm not doing well.
It's still anointed. I'm still crying. Sorry.
Can I speak? Did I go to school? In the midst of life's uncertainties, God knows what people need. Jesus is holding on to his people, and this relationship allows them to endure till the end. And then it just has this beautiful line: God was not risking Job's faith, God was refining his faith. And we can look at certain circumstances and struggles, and I believe we're like, God, where are you in this? And I think it builds our faith when we let it. When we actually say, well, no, God's in the middle of the mess and the pain and the health crisis and the lack, and God, the only thing I can depend on, the only person that I can depend on to get out of this is you. I think there's opportunity for absolute growth and depth, and tears. Tears are holy. Tears unto the Lord are so holy. And I just want to encourage anybody that may be listening or watching today, like, take your tears and your questions and your confusion to the Lord, not away from him, because that's where we find comfort. That's where we find counsel. Those aren't just his name. The Holy Spirit is our comforter and counselor by nature. Yeah. And so when we find ourselves in those places, to run into his arms, because he's waiting for us there. Jessie, you said something really interesting. You said, as a believer, as a Christian and a pastor, there is this tension of, I'm believing for something supernatural, but I'm not negating maybe my own responsibility or participation. Like, I'm going to do what I can do, whether that's medically. Can you speak into that a little bit more, just around maybe your convictions or your revelation, what God has kind of taught you?
Yeah, I think it was a lot. I think at first, so the surgery, I felt comfortable to pursue that. But I remember even the day before I had the surgery, praying God, it's not like you can do a miracle. They'll test before they, go in to operate. You can do it. So I think before every surgery and before every procedure, I'm always I have that position and posture of faith that it's you have permission to turn up and maybe I also just hate needles and veins. So I'm also you have permission, Lord, save me. But I think so particularly with IVF, I think I really wrestled that because I was really mindful that I didn't want to be creating an Ishmael. And that might sound really weird, but I didn't want to be trying in my own strength, like Sarah, saying, okay, this isn't working. Yeah. We've got this promise. So now I'm going to just try and make it in my own strength. So, all right. And so we're going the Hagar route. We're going to try and control this. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was a real wrestle. So we really wrestled that prayerfully. And And I think there is ethics involved in IVF that's actually really important to speak into. And like my husband and I, we spoke about, we believe that life is at conception. So however many embryos we had, we would be transferring. And there's a risk that you can have 15 or
6
20
babies.
Yeah, I mean, we did.
Yeah.
We got 6 embryos.
Wow.
And so we were over the moon initially thinking, all right, we could have six kids, because we were like, we won't engage this. I think sometimes we selectively engage, we're like, okay, anyway, but that was a conviction for us, is like, you almost have to kind of work out your ethics before you're going down some of like the medical route paths. But yeah, I think that I've felt the Lord, there's been a grace, as you say, to participate, to steward. I would say, even just on a very practical level, we've worked with teams of naturopaths, and the amount of health changes that we've made to our life, there's long-term life benefits in some of the changes that we've made. So I think there's a lot in it that I think has been beautiful and healthy. And so, yeah, I think my biggest takeaway would be like, do everything prayerfully.
Yeah.
Because I think like probably for one person, IVF, God's not in it. And for another, he might be. And so I think it's like actually praying and partnering. Again, that comes back to that. It's a personal relationship. There is a living God that is speaking and interactive, and he says yes and he says no. And we need to learn to hear his voice when we're making these decisions in life, so that we can be walking with him.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I really like the way that you articulated it, that it's a spirit-led decision, and it does take discernment to know what the steps are for you.
Yeah.
Also like that you touched on, IVF can at times be controversial. I know some believers that are completely anti.
Yeah, me too.
And my heart is always like, the empathy, the compassion for anyone that finds themselves in a position where they are at the end of themselves, and they are praying and they're believing and people are laying on hands regularly. And so my heart is always very soft. I don't think it's as black and white as we make it out to be.
Yeah.
I do appreciate you speaking into the fact that, there are then ethical dilemmas.
Yeah.
And we've never really talked about this much publicly, but Ben and I have been hoping and praying for a baby for 3-4 years now. As a family, we've been talking about it and actively trying for nearly 2.
Wow.
And IVF is something that we have had conversation after conversation with and wrestled with to go, is that the next step? Is that something that God is leading us into? And so discerning for yourself your convictions, understanding your values, and then I would say the bottom line is, as much as possible, attempting to tune into the voice of God and being open to his prompting of, is this for us, Lord? Is this the way for us? I know people that have thought and talked about IVF and a few months prior naturally fallen pregnant.
That's
amazing. like bless the Lord. Yes. I know people that have gone through IVF and literally like 30 rounds of IVF last time, and that's it, like over a very long period of time. The absolute last time fell pregnant, carried that pregnancy and birthed a beautiful child. They're literally on the Gold Coast, and I'm like, wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah, the endurance and the stamina. And I look at anyone that might find themselves in the same boat of not months but years, and I am in awe of their faith because faith that endures and perseveres, that's admirable. Like faith is not just active at church on a Sunday going, I've got so much faith. It's like faith is in the critical points of our life where we're so desperate for God, and it's in the pain, it's in the struggle, it's in the wrestle. And I think that's beautiful faith.
Yeah, I think faith has been something that I've wrestled with a little bit. And there was a couple of years ago where I think I was wrestling, like, do I have enough faith? Because if If God's good and miracles, like faith participates in that, is the issue here on my side with faith. And I've also felt a sense, maybe it was unhealthy, but whether I was being perceived as having enough faith. Did people look at me and think like, does she have faith? You know, and probably things that sometimes people would say that would be a little insensitive, probably added to it, where I felt like people were like, have you got enough faith?
Can we hit pause there and share on that? Because I know there would be people listening, and sometimes there's a bit of a disservice when the answer is almost like, what have you done wrong? Like, is there a reason that you aren't receiving the breakthrough? I find that when I hear that, I'm like, no, that's not the way the Lord operates. So just for the sake of the listener, have there been specifics of people maybe saying things to you that really impacted you or shaped you in a way?
Yeah, I think there have been. I think there's probably been risky prophetic words that didn't land. That I think my grace has probably increased. It's funny. The longer I've gone on, the more I have just recognized like we're all trying and we're all taking risks. But I think you do have to be mindful in this. And I'm grateful for people who do take risks, because I have a note full of prophetic words, particularly around this space. So I do want people to be bold, because it has built my faith that like, okay, this is the promise. I believe this is coming. But having said that, there have been specific words that just like, it's like, well, that was wrong. Just sometimes it's usually in the questions that are being asked where people are, they're trying to, as you say, solve the problem. And in the problem, if the problem is not in the Lord's timing, then it becomes a faith issue. And so I remember there was this point where I was really wrestling with God. And again, it ended up a lot of my personal songs were really just journal entries that then got music. And as I had quite a few of them, I was like, maybe this isn't just for me. So this song was called Faith and Friendship. And it started with a lot of questions. I am a question asker. I ask a lot of questions, which is wonderful and not so wonderful sometimes.
Is that why you kept asking questions to ChatGPT?
Oh yeah,
it is.
Yeah, I literally just have it in the car and I'm like, can you tell me what is the island of Guernsey like? I want to know the population of Slovakia. Like I think I just what do they eat?
You're a curious mind, which probably speaks to your creativity. But I love that you take these questions to the Lord as well, and they especially kind of draw the gritty ones out. Yeah.
And so one of these gritty questions was like, what was Sarah like at 28 and what was Abraham like at 50? Because we know that the miracle didn't happen until they're in their upper
old age,
75, 100. Like it's like there's like later on is where that miracle happens. So at my age, at the time of writing the song, I was like, what did by faith? What did that look like? It's like by faith, Sarah. But what did that look like? Like that was my question to Lord, because I was like, because I'm out here trying my best to like kind of look like I have faith, and I think I have faith, but do I have faith? Because like maybe I don't have faith. Like, and so this was like my wrestle was like, do I have enough faith? And I think sometimes probably also in like the Pentecostal space, which I love, and I love my church and I love the movement we're in, but I think sometimes we think that faith, we can be quite narrow with what we think faith needs to look like. It needs to look like a very certain sentence, and needs to look like a prayer that's prayed a very certain way, and that's faith. But as I was wrestling it, I was like, I think that faith looks like trusting.
Oh, I love that you said that, because the whole time I'm like, faith is trust. Faith is trust. It's trust. Yeah. It's literally trusting God.
Yeah. And that was what I wrote, was like, I think Abraham and Sarah passed the faith test because they trusted the Lord. Like at the end of it, there was a surrender. There was I want you more than I want what you've promised me, and I trust you, and I trust your timing, and I trust your purposes in my life, and even when I don't understand, I trust. And I think that song and that wrestle and that season like really gave me a lot of comfort in that I was like, no, I do have faith. You're pleased by my faith. And some humans may not be pleased by my faith, or they may try to mathematically equate this and see my faith lacking because I don't do X or I don't do Y or it hasn't sounded like this. But there's friendship here and there's trust here, and so there's faith here. Yeah.
Oh, that's so outstanding the way that is framed. I love it. Faith is also steadfast, and faith is consistent, and faith is taking our frailty to the feet of Jesus and to the foot of the cross. That's wonderful. I would love it if we could kind of maybe end today's podcast with you praying for people that find themselves maybe not battling with the same things or walking the same journey as you, but they find themselves stuck in the middle where faith is required for them to sustain. And that would just be beautiful. Are you happy to do that?
Yeah, totally.
Thanks.
God, we just thank you for today. We thank you for this conversation. And Lord, I thank you for every individual heart that is listening right now, every individual life. You know the story, you know the situation, you know the weight, you know the tears, and you know the pain. And God, I just pray that a revelation of your closeness and your nearness and that invitation to know you would be the prominent thing. Lord, I pray that each person that's in a waiting season would know that you actually are the pearl of great price, that you are the treasure, you are the great reward, you are the prize, that you are worthy, and that they would surrender again, that they would engage their faith again by trusting again, by laying down their life and trusting that the plans that you have are good, for I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, are plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you a hope and a future. And so, Lord, we speak that. I just release hope over each circumstance and each story. God, I do pray that where promises have been given, that they would trust the promise keeper, and they would trust your timing, and they would trust your hand at work, and that they would draw close. They wouldn't get offended. That you say, blessed is the one that is not offended by me. Lord, I pray that they would draw near, and that their faith would stay stirred and engaged, and they would keep their eyes to see the goodness of God in the land of the living, that they would continue to believe for all that you want to do in their lives. So we just pray all of this in your name, Jesus. Amen.
Because I like to see your face and to look you in the eye. I have written down my questions, and I've come to ask you why. But I think it's less about the answers, and it's more about my heart. Hold me close, pull me tight, and today we can restart. Keep me close to your heart, Lord. Keep me wrapped inside your nature. 'Cause all that glimmers is not gold. You're still my prize, my only treasure. Keep me close to your heart, Lord. Keep me wrapped inside your nature. Oh, 'cause all that glimmers is not gold. You're still my prize, my only treasure.
God is good even when life is not, right? Even when life is looking like a roller coaster, that is the ultimate truth, that He is faithful and gracious, and He is a healer and He is a provider. Jessie, thank you so much for sharing your story.
For having me.
You're amazing. Love you heaps. This is just like us putting a camera in front of
our coffee.
our conversations.
I thought that. Yeah. I was like, that's kind of nice.
But it's a lot shorter. I think the first coffee we had went for like 3 hours.
It's true.
But it's because you are just a stellar human being, and I really appreciate you sharing so vulnerably. And I hope that it was a blessing to those that were hearing it. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed today's episode, please comment below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And let's get healthy together.